Unique New York. Unique New York. The
Okay.
Olympic torch runner. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Ready when you are.
Are we recording? Okay.
You're listening to Barbell Logic, brought to you by Barbell Logic Online Coaching, where each week we take a systematic walk through strength training and the refining power of voluntary hardship.
Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I am Niki Sims, and I am joined here with, of course, Matt Reynolds.
How's it going?
And Andrew Jackson.
Heyo.
Heyo. So this podcast today, I wanted to record really specifically for a certain group of people. And those are the people who I see at the gym, on Instagram, or just know in my life who are going to the gym and they're working out and they're exercising. But I just know that their training and their time spent in the gym could be so much more intentional for what they really want. So what we want to talk about today is what that looks like when you kind of make that switch from just going to the gym to feel something to when you start having more of a plan and a program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actual training.
Yeah, actual training, which I know you've heard us talk about before. So I think one of the most important things that changes is instead of having your plan for the day, which is like, I'm going to do a certain body part, or I'm going to go and train specifically for this other sport that I do, you start having a program that is tailored to make you stronger. And that becomes the driving force.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Definitely. So the focus with training is about a goal that's not today, that's not tomorrow, that's down the road somewhere. And it probably should have a date, right? You probably need to make strength goals that are 3 months from now and maybe even a year from now. But we want to have goals that we can actually achieve that are focused around strength. And then the programming is always moving us toward that end goal. So Monday's training isn't about the way I feel Monday or what it does for me Monday. It's the cumulative effect of what it does with all of the other workouts that will lead up to these goals that I have for, say, March 1st.
Mm-hmm. And something that you just kind of called out there is now you have numbers and metrics associated with what you're doing in the gym. So instead of going into the gym to get a certain feeling, now you're going into the gym with something very objective.
Yes, the difference between performance, right? I mean, this is why and how we measure performance. People who, run the mile, a lot of times they keep track of what their mile time is. I ran my first, sub 6 minute mile. And it's the thing that you're chasing. In strength, it's the same thing. It's very easy to apply metrics to strength. It's the driving force in a strength program is the PR. We're chasing personal records. That doesn't always mean that we're chasing a 1 rep max. What is the 1 rep that I can do for the most amount of weight? And for people who are certainly in their early stages of training, who are coming out of this sort of exercising and having fun at the gym and feeling good. And by the way, we talked about this a little bit before we started the show. Those are great things. So many people don't do anything. They're very sedentary. And so if you're listening to this and you have recently begun exercising, maybe it's because it's the New Year's, it's January or whatever, that's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is about taking your fitness, your exercise to the next level.
Yeah.
And we can do that by tracking those PRs. And so that might be 3 sets of 5 PR, 5 rep max, or a PR with, a certain number of reps. Oh, I hit this weight. You did this today, right? You had bench press today. We were training and you bench press 135 for 10 last week.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, I really need to get it for 11 today. And you did.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's a PR. Not a 1 rep max PR, but it's still a PR. Quantifiable metric that you're better this week than you were last week.
Yes. Like instead of thinking, I'm going to go to the gym and do chest. Now I know I'm going to the gym, I'm doing heavy bench press, and then I'm doing an AMRAP at this weight. So when I look at it in my log, I can look back a couple of weeks and be like, oh, that's pretty rad. I've gotten stronger.
Yeah. And you spent a lot of time, Andrew, putting together metrics for us. You have an engineering background. And so numbers are like the thing that you're thinking about all the time. We look at performance. you are constantly asking the question, how do we know that our clients at Barbell Logic are getting good coaching? And one of the best things we do is we're able to apply metrics to their coaching, metrics to their performance, right? Like you take those numbers. I mean, what are some of the things that we measure?
Certainly on-time delivery, how quickly the client's getting their feedback, and from a client perspective, how compliant they are to their training. What percentage of exercises do they complete that are assigned? One of the things I think that's interesting, though, about people that I think we're talking to is that if you were to ask the average person who starts training what their strength goals are, a lot of times they don't even know.
Sure.
So I think sometimes it's also important to set some goals that may not be a specific strength number. So while metrics are important, it's really supporting some other aspect of your life.
Sure.
Or maybe sport.
Yeah.
How do you guys help a client translate what they're doing today into some kind of future goal that depends on their strength, but may not be measurable strength?
That's interesting to think about. Like, we'll have a client come in and maybe in their questionnaire, they'll say, I want to get stronger. And usually there's an aesthetic component to this too, is I want to look better. I want to lose some weight. I want to be more muscular, anything like that. So they don't know what they're capable of,
Right.
which is not their jobs to know. Like, it's our jobs to know. So I find it helpful to start looking at their lifts, and then I set some goals in my head for what I think they should lift eventually that I want to program them to. But then when we first talk to them, it's like, what really brought you here? Like, you didn't come in here. Well, some people do want to join Barbell Logic and squat 405, but some people just want to have a better butt. And you kind of have to dig into that. And I think you said this the other day. It's just like, no matter what you tell us, the answer is to squat and deadlift.
Right. Solution is basically the same.
Yeah.
But it's important to know the goals, right? The
And to
goal,
frame it with that.
The goals are super important. And it's not our job to try to force our clients into, we don't set the goals for our clients across the board and then say, now you have to meet our goals.
Yeah.
It's the other way around. The client says, I have these goals. Now, they may not be able to specify. So even for things like aesthetics, when somebody wants to lose weight or, look better, body recomposition, things like that, we often will still attach quantifiable goals there. So you might look at somebody, a male comes to me and he has a 43-inch waist. And I can say, well, one of the things that we're going to measure is, we're going to try to get your waist under 40 inches or whatever that is. Maybe in the first 3 months, we're just going to try to reduce your waist size by 1.5 inches, 2 inches, something that's achievable, something that gets them wins along the way. Ultimately, the goal may be to have a 35-inch waist, but we're not going to start there. We're going to start with what is a thing that is reachable for our clients, even with the aesthetic goals. And so I think what it comes back to, you can think about the things that Andrew thinks about from a performance standpoint for our coaches, because our coaches are performing as coaches. Therefore, we set metrics that identify if the coaching is of a high quality. Our clients, when they train primarily for strength, we will often look at those initial test workouts and what their first week of sort of a linear progression might look like. And we know as coaches, and we'll communicate to them, I think that you can achieve these strength goals, PRs, in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months. Not, I think you can be a 600-pound squatter 3 years from now. That's worthless. Too many things change. Same thing for aesthetics. Same thing for, we look at what Jillian does with our nutrition. It's these little quantifiable goals, these little steps at a time that, and remember that everybody, the exercisers at the gym that are walking on the treadmill, reading the magazine, they want to look better too.
And they're showing up. They're going to the gym
That's
and
right.
doing
but
work.
They don't know really how to achieve the thing.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is the difference. That's the primary difference between exercising and training and quality training, right? There are people that we've trained at a great barbell-based gym here in Springfield a couple times this past week, and everybody's in that gym. Everyone is squatting and deadlifting and doing the big lifts. But I guarantee you that there are people that still don't really have a program. They're not really working towards a goal. They're doing the right movements. They're not just flailing around or being on a treadmill. But so I think what's important in what you were communicating to us before we started to record is, what are the things we can do to make training effective, to make it efficient, to be Like certainly doing the right movements, like squats and deadlifts and that's a big step in the right direction. But that's not the only thing, right?
Yeah.
You can't just squat haphazardly, go in and squat by feel every single workout. That's not effective training. That's not moving towards a goal. So what are some of those things that you've thought about that make training effective?
Well, it has to be organized, as in you have to have certain parts of it that are consistent and then certain factors that change. So that would be, what you just said, the exercises are consistent, but the weight on the bar is going to change.
Yep.
Right. And that's what we're monitoring to make sure that progress is being made. So you have to have your eye on progress. You have to continue being consistent because it's going to still help, but it's not going to be as much of an impact if the consistency is not there. So there has to be organized consistency, and there has to be awareness of the objective qualities, like how much weight is on the bar, what's your body weight doing, what's your waist doing, and you have to record that somewhere. So logbook, an app, anything like that. So awareness, consistency, and progress being tracked to show that there's a trend.
Yeah.
What would you add?
Well, to me, one of the biggest things that needs to be present is a shift in mindset. And some of that is, like we already talked about, having the goals defined and set at some point in the future. And then, importantly for the client, applying that to their training in the sense that they're associating what they do today with how they're going to feel in some future state when they accomplish that goal.
Or because they think that they did something bad eating wise, and now they have to go punish themselves for it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think approaching the training not necessarily based on how I'm feeling today or even what I'm doing today, in the sense that like this is going to make or break, like my performance today is going to make or break my training.
Sure.
It's a part of this process.
Yep.
It's process-based thinking, aiming at some future state that you've defined and thought about. And when you said earlier being intentional about your training, to me, that's what it means, is that you're doing this workout today because you've thought about what you want to be in the future.
Yeah. Jillian called it the mosaic on the podcast we just did. Like your whole training life is just this mosaic, and every training session is a little piece to it. And the mosaic just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
I like that.
You talked about the organization is really just about having a plan. I mean, that's what a program is. That's why we do programming, right? And it's not, again, one of the things that we're really careful at Barbell Logic is that we don't utilize templates. We don't print off an Excel spreadsheet and hand it to our clients and say, this is the program that gets everybody strong because everybody should have the exact same goal. Like that's why that doesn't work. And so a personalized program that's tailored to you, your demographic, and your goals, while understanding that you can't think of yourself as a snowflake in, like, everybody still has to do hard stuff, right? There are times that, that you're not going to want to do the planned workout for today. But when you understand that, and here's the thing, here's that shift that Andrew was talking about. If my goal in general is to exercise today to make me feel good today, and it sort of is a thing I check off a box, or that I feel good about myself because I did a thing that I said I was supposed to do. And it's one of those days that you really just don't want to do it. You won't do it. But when there's a plan in place, when there's a program in place that the thing that you're working towards down the road, then even on the days that you don't want to do it, it's often easier to find not just the discipline, but the motivation to do the thing. And so I love to train. You guys love to train. I love the process of training. But there are days I do not want to train. I did not want to train this morning. We all went and trained this morning. We taught a seminar all day yesterday. I was exhausted. I didn't eat enough food yesterday. And I woke up this morning and felt not great. And I didn't want to train. But I went and trained, right? And I'm enjoying training right now. But I didn't want to go today. And I train. And what you find is within the first 20 minutes, I remember coming to Niki and I said, man, I kind of had a headache and I didn't feel great. But as I started to warm up, like my body felt okay. And I was still like, my head's still not into it. And then 10 or 15 minutes later, my head was into it too. And then I had a blast. And by the end of the session, I, in fact, still accomplished what exercise often gets you, which is I felt better. I was glad I did it.
You're in a way better mood.
Way better mood, right? So lots of stress relief. And I did the thing that I needed to do to work towards the goal down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And so it accomplishes so much more. That's what I love about training.
Yeah. You were saying some really cool stuff, Andrew, earlier, commenting that we sometimes say that training is boring, like bore over sore. Like it's not about the instant gratification. Like we do a lot of the same stuff and just change little things. But Matt made a good point about that can seem unappealing, but we've all clearly found a way to make it really special.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's another mindset shift that is helpful when you are doing something that is relatively repetitive. We're doing the same exercises, or at least a very relatively short list of exercises, so that we can progressively get better at it. And most people, or many people, look at that and say that it's boring or that they get bored. However, I think there's an opportunity to think about more and more granular details of the small list of exercises that you're doing, and that the repetition is actually a chance to refine the perspective that you have and to pay attention to smaller and smaller details and to improve each of those details a little bit.
Yeah.
And that when you start paying attention to that level of detail, or focusing your mind on those details, it's almost like meditation in a sense. You're controlling your attention to some detail over and over and over again, and commanding yourself to do that, I think, becomes a really beneficial mental practice in itself, in addition to the physical aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's something that I did rowing in college, literally
Talk about repetitive.
the exact same motion.
Right.
And for me, I rarely got bored because every single stroke was an opportunity to think about some detail. And for me, like with lifting, and I'm sure you guys have experienced this, sometimes, and it's really cool when it happens, reps feel very similar. And you get into a groove, and you can really take advantage of that consistency and how it feels and attack the weight.
Yeah, like all those times you spend being very aware of all the little bits and pieces of it are really useful for the days when it's just best to shut your brain up and do the thing.
Yes.
But because you practiced and you were really aware of what you were doing, you're able to do that and not just make a mess of yourself.
Right.
Yeah, it's good.
Other times the lifts feel totally different.
Oh yeah, it's like a total out of body experience, and you're like, why is my left leg like this?
Yeah, and it's frustrating, but it actually is very rarely boring. I've done the barbell
it
list
just looks boring on paper, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in about my 25th year, 24th, 25th year of training. And I don't know that I ever get bored with performing the movement.
Yeah.
Like how many squats and bench presses and deadlifts, like how many of those have I done over the years? And yet, even today, training with you guys, and it's always fun to train with other coaches. For us, we're all over the country. And so we don't get to train with other coaches in the same room very often, and it's one of the best things about us getting together. But by the way, we're recording this actually in person in my cabin and out in the middle of the woods somewhere, and so we're having a blast. I got to show you my cabin, but we're here doing this in person. One of the advantages is I was able to receive coaching from you all this weekend and vice versa. And here's what was interesting: while I was lifting, like Andrew just did my lift offs today on bench press, and there were still so many things for me to think about.
Yeah.
And like where to look. I remember thinking about, where my eye gaze was. And I was at a gym I don't normally train at. The barbell was a little different. How am I going to grab the bar? Exactly where am I going to place my hands? And then Andrew would make little comments and fix little things. Did the same thing for me on my squat the other day. I mean, I squatted a million times, and Andrew made a comment about fixing kind of balance point on my squat, and immediately, I mean, it's really fun to do that, and it wasn't boring. And likewise, I have seen I've coached both of you for years. I have seen thousands and thousands of literally your squats.
Yeah.
And every rep that you guys did today was also sort of exciting for me because I'm comparing it to the thing that I know it's supposed to look like. And so even though there is some level of monotony in the things that we do, the ability to really focus and hone in, it was interesting. I was thinking about this the other day, is like, there's all these, you've seen videos online, everybody's seen videos like this online of powerlifters, or maybe they're just ridiculous gym videos where, somebody super amped up for a lift, right? And like they've got people like slapping them in the back or the back of their neck or whatever, and they get all like crazy and they're yelling and they've got music blaring. And one thing I've noticed about specifically like our lifters, our coaches, is it's rarely about that. It's actually about how deep of a focus you can get.
Yeah.
My best lifts are when I'm going to lift heavy and maybe it's something that I'm not entirely sure I can get, you know. It's not about cranking the music up and having somebody slap me in the face and drive my adrenaline up. It's about how focused can I get on doing this well. And so rather than leaving it up to adrenaline and luck of just, I'm going to push real hard on the bar, it's to think about the same things I've thought about in making the form absolutely perfect, even on the hard ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, we talk about how training, the most important thing about training is for us, for progress, is consistency and form. We have podcasts about this. And so for some of you that are listening out there, some of you, especially with this being January, you have started a consistent exercise regime, which is excellent, right? Maybe one of your goals are to get up every day and go to the gym and do something or walk around your neighborhood or whatever that thing is. And that consistency matters even when it's exercise, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it switches to training, the consistency of training, remember, isn't about the thing we get today. It's about the thing we get tomorrow. And that requires this long-term plan, this long-term program. And then the form piece is the piece that coaches are able to bring to the table. And so, it's valuable to have a coach. It's valuable to have a coach all the time. And if you can't afford one all the time, it's valuable to get a coach on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
It's valuable to have somebody look at your lifts. And even if you're listening to this right now, you're a broke college kid, you can't afford a coach at all, it's valuable to video yourself on your own lifts and look at your form and compare them to, Barbell Logic videos on the how to, and to try to mimic those things as well. And when you're able to put those things together, so now we have a plan,
Mm-hmm.
a program, it's organized,
Mm-hmm.
and I follow consistency on the program
Mm-hmm.
and then focus on the form.
Yeah.
To me, those are the biggest overarching things that we can do to make training effective.
Yeah. And to feel like what you're doing with your time is worth your time.
Yeah.
Because it's going somewhere.
On that note, I was going to say we just did this camp yesterday, and one of the clients had been training alone for 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
And impressively got up to, I think 3x5 at 350 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
For the last 2 months, he's been battling really terrible knee pain, and it's been impacting his ability to be consistent. And by making one change in his stance,
Right.
he was able to work up to the heaviest squat that he's had in 2 months
Mm-hmm.
for 3 sets of 5 with no pain. And
Which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, how
yeah,
nice
exactly.
would that be?
I mean, it's so exhausting. I know this, and you guys have probably all experienced this,
Yeah.
like how exhausting it is to have this chronic pain,
Yeah.
not only during your training, but then it's distracting you during the day.
Exhausting. Yeah.
And so having that form in place is what enables the consistency.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And enables you to have that training mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So they all kind of interlink together, I think.
So we've talked about this before on the podcast about these big picture items. So we have talked about how to make training effective, form, consistency, programming,
Mm-hmm.
all of those big picture things. But that's not the only thing, right? Those are those big major things. One of the things you were talking about was making sure that your expectations are correct,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've talked a lot about this weekend about how to find motivation and keep motivation in training. I mean, I think those things matter as well. So you've thought about a lot of those things. What are some of those additional things that you're chewing on that are beyond the basics of have a plan, be consistent, understand that it's not going to be constantly varied every single day, that we're going to focus in on small number of lifts and work towards a future goal?
Mm-hmm.
Those were those big things.
One thing I've been chewing on, and I thought about this a lot during the camp yesterday, and then I thought about it a lot in the other sport that I've started doing, which is jiu-jitsu, is that when you start lifting, or I wonder if people think when they decide to start lifting, that by doing that, they're pigeonholing themselves into becoming a strength athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
When in fact, yes, you are taking up lifting and you are deciding to give some importance to being stronger, but it's not like ruling out every other thing that you could be ruling out. And it's not it's usually not depending on if you program it well enough, it's not a takeaway from the other physical activities that are important to you.
It's usually an ad.
Yeah.
If it's
good
done
programming,
well,
yeah.
right? So if you're a golfer, getting stronger doesn't make you a worse golfer.
Right.
It makes you a better golfer. Right.
Yeah.
But one of the things you were saying before we started recording is that people are afraid that it's going to change something about, there's still this, terrible myth of, for a golfer who has to be pretty flexible, pretty mobile. They've got that golf swing. There is a giant amount of range of motion in a golf swing. And people would say, I don't want to put on all this weight because then it's going to screw up my golf swing. Right. And here's the thing. I've started to move this direction as I've gotten older. Most of these thoughts are actually not wrong. They're just misguided a little bit. If you are a golfer who plays golf all the time and you completely stop playing golf and you spend 6 months during the winter just lifting weights and you put on 35 pounds of muscle and then go back out in the spring and try to swing your golf club, it is going to be different.
Right.
But that's not what we do. And so, you're really into BJJ. And so if your primary love, your primary passion is another sport, is not powerlifting, is not a strength sport, but is anything. I mean, literally any sport, like whatever that thing is, right?
Triathlons, whatever you like to do.
Then strength training should be a benefit to that.
Exactly.
Not a takeaway, but that it's dependent on a couple things. That thing that you do in sport is almost always skill-based, which means you have to still constantly practice the sport to maintain the skill as you get stronger. But then you have to recognize that what we're doing in the weight room to get stronger is we're making structural adaptations that will help with and support the skill-based sport, right? What are we really doing when we're strength training? Well, we're building muscle. That's what we're doing. We're adding
increasing the contractile force that our muscles are capable of.
That's right. And the more muscle we have and the more we practice the getting stronger which means literally the muscle being able to contract and produce more force, then for almost every sport, that's going to carry over and be a positive.
Yeah.
So long as you continue to practice your sport in general to maintain your skill level.
Yeah.
So here's a question I have. Within your community, you're known as being someone that's strong, correct?
I don't want to be like egotistical about anything, but it's been tossed around, yes.
It's been commented on, shall we say. And yet there's I would imagine, or based on conversations we've had, there's this disconnect that what you're doing in the weight room with your training is why you have that strength. Would you say that, or maybe the way that you're training is disconnected from the strength?
Yeah, I feel like I know what you're saying. Let me try and recategorize this into my own head. Like, it seems like people will be like, oh, well, that's just Niki and she's just really strong. But also, like, when I train now, I lift because I want to get stronger so that I can use it in jujitsu. It's not like I walk out of the jujitsu gym and I'm like, okay, well, now I'm powerlifter Niki.
Right.
It's like,
right. Yeah.
No, like, it's all the same body.
It's not compartmentalized.
The same me showing up and doing things. Yeah.
It just fascinates me that nobody would be like, wow, that would be super useful to be.
It fascinates me too. I'm like, come on, you guys, like, stop doing Turkish get-ups. Like, are you rolling with a 45-pound competitor?
Yeah.
You were not. You were rolling with a 165-pound competitor.
Right.
Like, learn how to do a bench press.
Right.
At your body weight. Learn how to deadlift.
Do you feel like that your strength training, is it called a mat in BJJ? What's it called?
Yeah.
First off, what does it do for your confidence walking onto the mat when you're getting ready to face someone else? And you pretty much know going in that you're stronger than that person.
It is helpful.
Now,
very much.
They may have better technique. They may have more skill. They may be
9 out
more
of 10 times, yes.
More experience. Well, and then so that's a great follow-up question. How much has your strength helped fill the gaps where you started this sport pretty late? You haven't been doing it that long. Has it really helped with the places where you're not quite as skillful as some of the other fighters? Is that what they're called? How much does it help bring you up to standard?
So one just kind of logistical thing is it gives me more potential training partners because there are more men than women in class, unfortunately. And sometimes it's like half and half, but if I'm able to roll with, 20 out of 30 people in the class, that's pretty awesome.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's not always the case for lighter women. So that's one thing. And then also where I'm at, like in like middle-aged blue belt, is like you have to get comfortable with holding positions. You have to remember to hold positions and not just scramble around.
Mm.
So if I'm able to maintain a strong position, that means I have more time to go into the next position that I want, to get to the submission that I want.
Mhm.
So being able to utilize my strength to hold what I want to hold really opens up a whole lot of potential for me.
Sure.
And I can get out of situations better. I can move my body. I can move other people's bodies. And it's because like, it's not like when I bench press, my muscles are just like, we are bench pressing. This is what my pecs and triceps do now.
Right.
It's the same, elbow flex and extension. It's contracting my pecs, contracting my glutes when I need to do hip extension.
To me, that's a perfect example to tie back to the beginning of our conversation where we were talking about setting a goal that may not be a strength metric, but that you could
like that.
say, I want to be stronger holding positions.
Mm-hmm.
You could pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Over time,
totally.
as you get stronger, am I getting better at holding my positions?
And I've totally started feeling that in my squats where I'm doing like all these box squats in a row or all these pause squats in a row. I'm just like, just imagine you have someone in your guard and you're slowly working towards choking them. And it like makes me not get super hyped, which doesn't help me when I squat.
Yep.
And I just imagine like a slow choke.
Yep. You have to hold a position.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Under control.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that stuff is really similar.
Stay calm, breathe.
Right.
Yeah.
And that also ties to, I think, that focusing your mind and that attention piece that we were talking about also is that's really interesting. I don't know that I'd ever heard that before, but like you're actually focusing your mind, imagining how it would be applied, how that exercise would be applied.
Same similar kind
That's
of,
really
this
cool.
is difficult. How can I make this work to my favor?
Yeah.
Right.
Good. That's good.
And what I hope to connect that to with other people is just like, if like lifting is an important part of our routines, it can be considered a hobby, but like, that's another cool way to think of it is like when you pick up a new hobby, woodworking, or you pick up, you're a dad, so you have a really nice lawn. Like you start to, right, Matt?
Just got real excited.
Like it's something that you spend time crafting your technique with and becoming more aware of it. And it just, it doesn't mean that you have to be a lifter and you have to eat tons of protein all the time and have a new Instagram account. Like it kind of just makes you a more interesting person because you spend time being curious and learning.
Yep.
And improving.
Yeah, with a purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
With a purpose is, I think, is the key. So, yeah, so really we've got two types of listeners probably that are listening to this. You have the people who are focused primarily on, I want to strength train to improve my health and quality of life in general.
Yeah.
Right? First off, everybody wants to improve their quality of life. Who would say they don't want to improve their quality of life, right?
Nihilists.
And so we know that strength training for the vast majority of people are going to improve their quality of life. For some people, it is the primary quote unquote sport or hobby or passion, or will become that over time. And that's great, right? Training doesn't really necessarily look any different for those people than it does for the people who are more passionate about something else, like tennis, golf, whatever the thing is. And here's what's crazy is that for people who are very passionate about another thing, especially if it's a physical, if it's a sport, if it's something, they will train at that. Like people who do jujitsu, they train hard.
Oh, yeah.
At jujitsu.
Right.
Oh, it's crazy. They terrify me. It's great.
And yet it's interesting to go like, but there's this thing that you could do. You could train significantly less time than you spend training jujitsu that will change your body so much over time that will give you a tremendous advantage at the thing that you're actually very passionate about.
Yeah.
Right. And you see this all the time. You see the person that is the strongest tennis player, the strongest golfer, the strongest, like it never hurts them. It always helps them. Right. So long as you continue to practice the skill. So whether you're somebody who has a passion in another sport or whether you're somebody who's just trying to make the next step to improve your quality of life and fitness and whatnot, so that the weight training is the base of what we do. The training looks kind of the same for those people.
It's really interesting.
And yet I'm going to shamelessly plug Barbell Logic or coaching in general, because you mentioned templates earlier, which is not a horrible place to start. But most templates are geared towards preparing for some meet or some PR. Whereas if you are just doing quality of life improvement goals, you probably need a custom program.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
You need somebody who's going to build something that's going to fit your training schedule,
Yeah.
your practice schedule for whatever
Sure.
that thing
Whatever
is,
equipment you have.
or the equipment you have.
Previous
And
injuries, current injuries.
Mhm.
so a template may be difficult to use in that way.
Template might be limiting.
Right.
Interestingly enough. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll wrap this up. But one of the things we talked about yesterday at the camp that I'm constantly both surprised and proud of are the number of our coaches who are professional barbell coaches who are also clients of Block, paying
Mhm.
clients of Block, because the coaches recognize the value in getting coaching.
Mhm.
And so they pay for coaching.
Yep.
Because they know they need it as well. So we'd love to have you as a client.
Mhm.
Ultimately, this podcast is more about a paradigm shift for many of you
Yeah.
Mhm.
into what it looks like to go from exercise, which is great,
Mhm.
to training,
Mhm.
which is better and more effective.
Yeah.
And we never want to knock the exercise. That's a great place to start. But
But we really just want to help you isolate what's important to you,
Mhm.
and then we really want to help you get there.
yeah, the best return on investment.
Yeah.
That's the idea. Simple, hard, effective, right?
Mhm.
It is. It's extremely effective and it's
Yeah.
efficient. It's the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in training, two things. One, we would love to have you research and find our content. We put out tons of content for free. This is not a plea for you to be a client of Barbell Logic. We love the content and we try to put out every tremendous amounts of high quality content, video content on YouTube, the podcast, written content, articles, ebooks, all those things are there and they're free and you don't have to sign up. You don't have to pay $1 for it. We're not going to ever ask for that. Right. And then, so that's number one. And if you're ready to get a coach, we'd love to coach you. You can go to barbelllogic.com. Your first month is always free. That stuff is great. But ultimately, hope that the new year for you all, as you're listening to this in 2021, is one that helps you identify and set those goals. This is the direction I want to go, and start to move towards that so that you can take your exercise to the next level
Mhm.
and enter the world of training.
Ooh.
Try it.
Yeah.
You'll like it.
It's a blast. We've been doing it for a long
And if
time.
you don't like
and we
it, you
still
don't have
love
to do it forever. It's totally fine, but you might like it.
That's right.
It's true. It's true. Most people stick with it once they do
You
it.
guys ever heard that Yo Gabba Gabba song? Try it. You'll like it.
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah, we'll have to check that out. Dance party later tonight.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Barbell Logic podcast. We will catch you next week. We always have both new podcasts coming out every week and topical series that are coming out. So we've got lots of fun stuff planned for 2021. Stay tuned. If you haven't done so and this podcast has brought you value either today or in the past, we'd love to have a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks all. Bye.
Later.